Hi students, welcome to Module 10. In this module, we are diving into the topics of professionalism, business etiquette, and teamwork in meetings. You'll hear from Laura Simmons at Blue Ridge Community College as she shares her take and experience in this environment, in both the in-person, face-to-face, telephone, and online environment. Learning outcomes for this module are very broad. They cover the topic of business professionalism and etiquette in the workplace, online and telephone environment. It also addresses teamwork in the workplace and in meetings, in addition to your interview skill prep. In this module, please remember that we are covering 2 chapters of content. So we're continuing to work through business communication, but we're also focusing on our interview project. At this time, you should be prepping your interview questions, preparing for that interview, and confirmation to complete in this module. With that, I wish you all the best and enjoy the module content.
So my name is Laura Simmons. I'm the Director of Enrollment Management here at Blue Ridge Community College, and professionalism is a huge importance in the workplace, especially when you're working with the populations that we work with, which is the public. It's very important that you maintain a level of professionalism that gives the person that you're interacting with, whether that's a customer or a student, them feeling the best experience they can possibly feel, you being kind and courteous and always trying to empathize with what they're experiencing, and having that level of professionalism within your team and within the people that you're interacting with is also equally important, because you're interacting with a group of people who really need to know that you have their back and that you're going to maintain professionalism and really be able to be courteous back to them, the individuals you're working with, that you're a servant leader or that you're leading with some direction that lets them see that you truly want to help them. You're here to support them and help them grow professionally as well.
All right, now let's talk about developing professionalism and business etiquette. So an entry-level student, they've been through 100-level business, marketing, finance courses, and now they're looking to expand and build into this capstone course. We are working on interview skills. Their first job may be in a professional setting. Let's talk about the importance of building professionalism, learning those basic business etiquette skills to build a competitive advantage in the workplace.
I think probably the biggest thing that we see with students coming in, especially maybe they want to work at the college. So sometimes we have graduates that come back and they're like, I really want to work here. And we would love that. We love to give students the opportunity to come back here and to give back to students the way that we've been giving to them. But I think sometimes the errors that we see are things that they miss in interviews. They don't really know the best way to market themselves, as far as like saying, hey, these are the things that I've not done a lot with, but what transferable skills do you have that might be really relevant, that while you don't have the work experience, you do have transferable skills from other things that you've done in life. Share those, really sell yourself. So I think some of that's personal selling, letting them know why you would be the best in that role. And I think sometimes our students don't know the best way to share that, and they don't know a really eloquent way of saying, hey, but I have these other skills that might be really advantageous to your organization.
Yeah, and let's say you're hired, right? The student gets hired and they come in. When we start to talk about business etiquette and building the soft and hard skills that are referenced, we talk about being on time, having a business professional appearance, maintaining a level of professionalism and communication, whether it's online, in person, in a Zoom meeting, and all of these avenues, or even a telephone call when they're answering it. Let's touch on the importance of building etiquette in that business environment.
So I think when you're thinking of business etiquette, I think one of the things that we've realized with our students is they're not super confident with phone calls, because we live in a time when you can communicate mostly via text messages or emails. So that verbal communication, whether it's written or audible, you need to be able to actually have that experience. And the more they do it, the more confident they get with those skills. So I think a lot of times we see students refrain from wanting to make the phone calls, and sometimes it's really important for them to build that skill. So a lot of times with our SGA and our ambassadors, we ask them to make phone calls to vendors, because it gives them the opportunity to get on the phone and talk with someone. You're going to have to answer an on-the-fly question sometimes, and that's hard. But learning how to do that, the more they do it, the more confident they get. Then when they move into a more business professional setting, they have those skills. And it's sort of those training pieces all along that aren't really intended to be super training pieces and really heavy, but it's something that's given them a little bit of a baseline. It's wet their feet a little bit. They're feeling a little more confident in what they have to offer. I think the same thing goes with what they put out on social media. That's one of the things we always talk about, is be very mindful of what you're distributing as far as who you are as a person, what you're sharing on social media, because it's always going to come back to haunt you. And you may think that that one tweet that you tweet is going to be a big deal, and then it's not a big deal in your mind, but it might be a big deal for an employer. So being mindful of your actions have consequences, and being mindful that whatever you put out there could come back and could be questioned at a future time. So being able to back up whatever you've put out there, or taking responsibility for what you've done and saying, yeah, I'll own up to that, because sometimes that makes a big difference too, is owning your own failures and being able to say, I made a mistake.
And learning from it.
And learning from it, yes. Moving forward, what did you do to make it better? How did you move forward? That's one of the biggest questions that we ask in most of the positions that my team hires for, is tell us about a time that you made a mistake. What did you do, and how did you overcome it? And I think it's the overcoming. Usually the mistake's not the big deal. It's how did they overcome it that we're looking for. What did you do? How did you mend that relationship? What did you do to move forward from that?
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Now let's go back to telephone. I love that you have the students flex that muscle, because the more you do it, the less ominous it feels, and the more, I guess, easier it is to pick up the phone. So let's talk about voicemail, especially when it's your own voicemail. Maybe you are applying for a position, it's your personal voicemail, maybe it's your work voicemail. Touch on that.
So it's the same thing when you're calling, if you're interviewing people for positions, or if it's a student calling. If your voicemail box either is full, which is not ideal, that sends a message without really sending a message maybe, or your voicemail doesn't have your voice on it and it's just the staged message that comes with your phone or with your phone company, that also sends a message maybe. It also creates some apprehension with the employer or whoever's calling. They're like, I don't know that I got the right person.
Correct.
So then being more mindful of what sensitive information you're leaving on that voicemail, because it might not go to the right recipient. So I think that's super important as well. But I think having a really clear set up voicemail that says who you are, what number you've tried to call. So, hi, you've reached the voicemail of Laura Simmons at, and give your number, so they know who they're reaching. And I think the same thing goes in a business environment. Your voicemail at your desk, if you have a landline that's tied to you as a professional, it's really important that it has a very clear message so that the person knows who they've reached, what position they're in, to where they know they've reached the right person, and they can confidently leave that message and know that it's going to the right person. Because if you have students making calls, they might hesitate, and then they panic, and then they hang up, and they're like, I don't know that I called the right person.
Sure.
So if you don't have those identifying markers on the voicemail, or you're not sure about it, you might hesitate. So I think teaching the students how to leave an appropriate voicemail back then, if they're unsure, leave something vague. Hi, this is Laura at Blue Ridge Community College. If you could please return my call at your earliest convenience, give your number, and then restate the number so they know you're calling and maybe it's a need, but without sharing what the need is. That way there's not any breach of confidence there.
So let's start to talk about meetings and face-to-face communication. So I know face-to-face communication can be in a variety of settings, whether you're sitting at a front desk or you're a frontline employee speaking directly to a customer, whether you're in an interview speaking face-to-face or in the office speaking to a colleague. Let's talk about professionalism and face-to-face communication.
I think that face-to-face communication looks so different now than it did even 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I think the way that we approach individuals is so very different. And I think creating a welcoming environment with the person that you're interacting with sort of sets the stage for something being a little less intimidating and a little more friendly and conversational. And I think that's probably the way I like an interview to run, is for it to feel very conversational. The person doesn't feel interrogated. It gives them the ability to relax a little bit, share a little more, and then you get to see a little bit more about the person, and it's not just really rehearsed and stiff. So I think that one of the things that I think is the most helpful is when you're engaging with someone that you're actively listening. So sometimes that means saying less, nodding more, but really making the nods mean something. Like you're really actively listening, you're taking that information in, you're cataloging it. Maybe you're taking notes about what's being said so that they know that you're actively participating in whatever that is. I think a lot of things that can happen in those face-to-face meetings, professionally, even personally, if somebody's on their phone while they're talking to you, you know they're not engaged. You know that they're not listening to you. And I think that the same thing goes with the computer. If you're looking at the computer while you're in a meeting, people think that you're not engaged with the meeting material. You might be taking notes, but people don't know that. They think that you're doing other things. And I think that we have entered into this world where we're so fixated on multitasking. And unfortunately, I don't really know that anybody's great at multitasking. I think a lot of times we're muddle tasking
Fair.
We're doing a lot of things, maybe not as well as we could. And I think sometimes focusing your efforts on the one thing really could show you that you could do the one thing, finish it, and then move to the next task and do it better and do it with your full heart and it not be sort of half done. And so I think face-to-face meetings, sometimes setting aside what you have going on and truly focusing on that meeting so you're actively engaged, you're involved, you can participate, then you know what the expectations are for you at the end of that meeting. What is required of me when I leave here? Do I have homework? Are there things that are required of me? If you've not paid attention and you've just been, doing whatever you're doing on your phone or your computer and not really engaged, you don't know. You leave there unsure, like, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing now. So I think that flexing that same muscle of learning to disengage from stuff around, truly focusing on the individual that you're talking to instead of doing the 100 things that are on the outside peripheral edge.
You touched on two things I want to expand upon a little further. One is active listening, and I think what you're saying is you seek to learn. The more you can learn, the better you can serve the person you are speaking to.
For sure.
And so I just want to highlight that for students, the importance of seeking to learn as much as you can to make an informed decision to best serve the person.
Yes.
I think the second thing that was excellent was active participation in meetings with what I took away as action items. So I think a lot of times, especially when you enter the workforce, those first few meetings, you think the meeting is the culmination of everything. Like the meeting is the end. The meeting is the work session that starts the homework to be done.
Absolutely.
Highlight that a little bit.
So I think that we have several things that we do here on campus where we come together, we meet. Those meetings create the action and people leave with action items. There's different requirements for each individual because the person leading the meeting may not be the person that's going to push the whole body of work forward. They have a team of people. There's a reason there's a group. It's a group effort, and it's not like a group project where you have one person that does everything. It really has stakeholders, multiple people that are involved in it because they have a vested interest. If one part of it doesn't go well, it could directly impact somebody else's work. So it's very important that you have that cohesive group coming together, pushing the whole body forward, and then there will be subsequent meetings after that. They might be Zoom meetings, they might be phone calls, it might just be email threads, but all of that is sort of the start of the work. And then there's other meetings to follow where you pull back those action items. Where are we at with these things? How have we moved these things forward? What do we need to do now? Did this work? Did this not work? Do we need to reconvene to come up with another plan because this position's changed or something organizationally has shifted? What do we need to do to sort of respond to that?
Right. So I think that's something that Blue Ridge does very well, especially working with your department and strategic planning initiatives, is the diverse mindsets at the table, various viewpoints from different areas of expertise within the college, having a work session as a team in that meeting, so coming prepared to engage with the homework ready to present and discuss, but also having an open mindset to maybe shifting the viewpoint you came in with, moving through that meeting and then moving into subsequent subgroups to really do the work outside of the meeting. Now, you also touched on virtual. I think there's a false sense of a filter in the virtual environment, but in all reality, it's really tough to get a variety of mindsets in different locations to the table in person. It's a luxury when we can do it.
Very much so.
And often it moves into the online environment. Let's talk about those Zoom meetings.
It's the same thing. Like, I think that one thing we learned from the time period of 2020 and the pandemic is we're not super great at digital meetings and being virtual. We tend to think there is a filter and that nobody knows what else we're doing in our office. We know, you can see when people are not engaged. You see their eyes moving all over the screen. They might have two screens and they're actively checking emails on the other while they're engaged via the Zoom call on the other screen, but they're not really engaged. They're just, it's that presenteeism where they're there, but they're not really there. So there's a physical presence, but they're not actively participating. And I think sometimes people think a Zoom meeting is less important than a face-to-face meeting because there is that false sense of a filter that I can just be here and listen in, but I don't have to actively participate. And then oftentimes what happens is people disengage and then all of a sudden somebody says, Laura, what do you think about that? And then you're like, oh, they asked me a question. And if you've not been engaged, you don't know. It's the same thing of leaving the meeting where you've been engaged with your computer while you're in the meeting. If you're not engaged when you're in the virtual meeting, the same thing happens. You get left sort of in a lurch of not knowing, oh, there were things they were depending on me for. And now I've let my group down, or I dropped the ball because I wasn't listening.
Now, this is my downfall. When it comes to an online meeting, I tend to schedule myself a little tighter. And sometimes, more often than I like to admit, I'm a little late to an online meeting because I have a false sense of security in that online environment. Let's talk about the importance of scheduling and showing up on time.
I think that we had that exact same experience coming back in person and then having to stop doing as many Zoom meetings and moving to in-person meetings. We were blocking everybody's calendar with no buffer for time in between. And if it's an in-person meeting and then a Zoom meeting right after, that seems great. But if they're walking from a distance, if they're even negotiating from across campus to across town, I mean, all businesses have this experience where you may have to go meet a client or a customer at some other location, and then you got to get right back to your designated workstation, and you've got to log into a meeting, and you don't have enough time allotted. So I think that is huge. I think that we've gotten really comfortable with blocking things back to back to back, and it sort of puts everybody in a bad spot because we think, oh, it'll be fine, I'll be a couple of minutes late. Then you get into the task of having to log in from your car if it's a Zoom meeting, which also sends a message. It sent, well, a couple of messages. It probably sends a message. I appreciate that they made the effort to log in because that seemed important enough for them to log in, but the other side of it is they didn't think it was enough importance to get back to their desk so that they could be focused and not driving while doing the Zoom meeting, because that's inherently not safe. And also, you're not able to put your full attention on the meeting. You're distracted by the driving, which you should be, but you're not paying attention to either thing as you should be. And you're putting yourself in danger, and you're also just really not engaging with the meeting to begin with. But I think if we look at it now, I think we've done better in the last probably year of looking at that and trying to be mindful of how we're booking people's calendars. And even if sometimes it's thinking, oh, they'll have plenty of time, checking with the person, saying, hey, I have this time period, I really need you. I know you have something else on your calendar, even if you can't see the details. You know they have a busy block on their calendar. Asking, is this doable for you? Are you on campus and can you get there? Do I need to bump it to 10:30 instead of 10 a.m. so that you have a buffer between? Because that buffer also provides somebody the opportunity to come in, collect themselves, get their stuff, get a drink of water, maybe use the restroom, take care of personal things that they need to just to inherently show up their best selves at the meeting that's in person or via Zoom. And I think sometimes we don't offer that. So I think it's trying to be mindful of how you block somebody's calendar or how yours is, or advocating for yourself and saying, hey, I have something right before this, I can't do that. Can we push it back a little? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's better on the front end to say, hey, I need a little professional courtesy here and give me a buffer. Then you can have the time you need before the meeting.
I think it goes back to relationships, and that's also with the customer face-to-face, that's in the workplace. It's building those relationships and showing that professional courtesy of, I respect you as a human, and I would like your undivided attention in this meeting so we can be the most productive.
Absolutely.
Let's touch briefly on technologies for planning and hosting digital meetings. Now, that can be anything from the creation and sharing of an agenda prior to the meeting to maybe a professional background when you may be having a hybrid-based meeting and be working from home or coming into the office. Let's talk about that.
So I think I like to look at our interview process or even large-scale projects that we're working on. I think oftentimes we think people know what we're doing before we do it, and we make an assumption that they're going to understand when we put this meeting on their calendar what it's for. So I think it's really important on the front end, having an agenda created or having something that's shared out before the meeting even hits their calendar to say, hey, I would love for you to add things to this agenda. So for student services, we do a running notes for our staff meetings each month. So you're able to add the notes in there, you add your information. If there's something that needs to be touched on beforehand by our vice president, that's easy for her to see on the front end and take care of. So when we get into the meeting, she's prepared with some answers if there are questions. I think that gives people the opportunity to present the information, have a moment to respond to it, and then be able to proceed with it in the actual meeting and get the answers that they're looking for, so the time is really efficient and it's not a meeting where we spend time trying to figure out the answers to these questions. So I think the other piece of that is with those virtual meetings that are leading to maybe a project, or maybe you've had one big work session and now you're moving forward, it's creating that agenda so people know what to expect before they get there. They also know if they have homework, like, oh, they're going to ask for me to share information about this. We do the same thing with graduation. We have a team leaders meeting. Sarah will send the agenda out to our group. We review the agenda. I know I have a place in the agenda where I'm expected to share what the celebration team is doing for graduation for the graduates to celebrate them for that year. Now, that can vary in a lot of different ways, and part of that is the logistical pieces. Which area is plant operations blocking off roads? How are we blocking things off to ensure safety? So some of it is the fun part, but it's also the homework I need to do on the back end of thinking through, what do we want to do? Where do we want photo backdrops that are appropriate, that aren't going to cause congestion and traffic? So there's some homework I have to be able to share in the meeting when we actually have the meeting. And if I didn't have the agenda on the front end, I don't know what's expected of me necessarily. I can make an assumption of what she might want me to share, but then it's not productive. I don't have any resolution for her. This is what's happening.
Right.
And so I think the agenda helps prepare you. Sending a document, even if it's a planning document for people to add to, gives a lot of context and a shared document to work from. But then also, if you send an email preparing somebody for a large meeting, hey, welcome to this group. This is what we're doing. I want you to be a part of this. This is something I feel passionately about. I think you would be a wonderful addition to this group. These are the reasons why I want you to be part of the team. And this is why I want you to help with this. These are the skills I see in you. And this is what our goal is. This is what we're hoping to achieve with this. So the person sees how they fit within the context of what's being asked of them.
So you're talking about asking someone to come to a meeting. The agenda is kind of your preparatory homework and being in the right mindset when you walk in there. But that ask, that initial ask, and it's not only preparing them about what they're walking into, but also that relational component again of why they are the right fit and why you want them to participate.
Absolutely.
So building up that engagement component in a professional environment and then starting the task at hand.
Absolutely. And I think it helps people see where they fit, or recognizing that their skill sets are valued. And that makes most everybody feel good. If it's like, hey, I know you have a really, really solid understanding of marketing plans. I would love for you to be a part of this particular group because of your experience with a marketing plan that's external to what you do here at the institution, but it's something that you have experience with from a professional setting or from private industry. I would love to have your expertise in this. And that makes people feel validated, or that you've learned something about them that you're pulling from their skill sets and their strengths.
It also gives you an opportunity as that employee to expand your skill set, to stretch that kind of breadth of study and really get in there and help the college or whatever business environment you are in with your area of expertise.
Absolutely.
I love it. Okay, you ready for the last one?
Yes.
All right. With all of the work you do with students through the Student Government Association and graduation, everything throughout the year, what is one tip you have for our graduates, our business program capstone students, as they move towards graduation and enter the workforce?
I think the biggest thing that I would offer to students as a tip would be really, really build relationships with your faculty and your program. They are your biggest allies. They're going to help you find the right place in the industry of which you're typically looking for a role. So if you're thinking, I want to work in this business environment, utilize your instructors. Most of them have already worked in that business environment. They can help you make connections, creating a network. So I think that's the biggest piece for me that I see that's helpful for students, is creating a network, because you never know how you might interact with a person on down the road that might end up being your boss, and you never thought that that relationship would stem anything other than, oh, they were my instructor. But they might have an opportunity for you later, or they might know somebody else who has an opportunity. So I think networking is the biggest thing. Take the relationships you have here, build on them, foster them, grow them, continue to embrace them. Stay in touch with your instructors post-graduation. Keep those relationships strong.
I love it. Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome. Thank you.